హలో 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 వస్తుందా? కాల్ చేశాను కొంచెం. హలో 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 వండుకు మైక్ ఇష్టం వస్తుందా లేదా?
We are waiting for Professor Mishra, who is the director of IP. He got stuck in a meeting, so he'll come around 5:45. So that's why we are delayed. We can have tea and snacks outside in the meantime.
We have a bit of a delay because Professor R.K. Mishra, who is the director of the IP, which is the host organization, is delayed. So that's why we are going behind schedule a little bit. So I seek your indulgence. We will know in about 10 minutes or so whether we should start off without Professor Mishra being here or not. So just give us another 10 minutes because everybody else is here but not Mishra. So all of you settle down in the rooms and anybody who's been to the
And European Commission. It's my privilege to welcome the inaugural panel over here. As shared by Mr. K.T. earlier, that we are expecting a delay from Professor Mishra, who is the director of IPE. He's got stuck in a meeting. So I welcome here Dr. Lakshmi, who's assistant professor here in the IPE. Dr. Lakshmi, please, if you can come here. Mr. Sandeep Chachra, who is the executive director of ActionAid. So please come to the panel. Mr. Anjanelu, who heads the Hyderabad regional office of ActionAid. Anjanelu, welcome. And Mr. K.T. Suresh, who is the co-director of Urban Action School, and many of you are aware of him as well. Welcome panelists and dignitaries. Dr. Lakshmi requested me that she would like to speak last. So I think we can start with Mr. Sandeep Chachra. Okay. So I welcome Mr. K.T. Suresh, who leads the Urban Knowledge Hub of ActionAid, which is called CIRIC, that is Citizens Rights Collective, and also is the director of Urban Action School. He brings with him a rich experience of working with national and international organizations. He has in past worked with the Amnesty International as executive director, with UWA, leading the UWA team as executive director again, and Equations as director. He is also the founding member of Group for Institution Development, Society for Organizational Learning, and is part of several committees of different organizations across India. His interests have been also to do several change management and organizational development processes, and he's worked with in this capacity with UNRISD Geneva, UNCSD New York, UNICEF India, and governments of Nagaland and Tamil Nadu. So welcome Katie, and over to you to set the context of the 21-day course.
Thank you very much, Prita. Is it working?
It is.
Yeah. It's called the Urban Action School, and many of you left school long time back. So I suppose there might be some curiosity about why it is called a school. Let me just say that you will probably figure it out as we go along, but as a sort of a matter of just giving you a teaser to the process, I think it's because we will try to both learn and unlearn. That would be something that I can guarantee all of you that in the next 20-21 days that we are together, we will both learn as well as unlearn some of the things that we have held rather closely to our hearts. So that's one of the reasons why we call it the school, because all of us, and that does not apply just to you, but it applies to each one of us who's also sort of facilitating the process. Each one of the schools is something that that we've grown also in, each one who has been participating in this process. Dr. Irfan, who spoke a little impromptu a little earlier, was part of the first course that happened in the very same building. So he's right here with us. We have the Urban Action School has been running since 2015. It has now an alumni of over 400 odd people who have gone through this program and have found it useful. My wish is that you will as well find it useful as you participate in this course. This particular program and the theme of every Urban Action School has been different, but this particular one is also something that we ourselves have been challenged by. As a team who put this program together, we've been challenged by it because the work around commons have not been too much. In India specifically, it's not been quite a bit, and around the world also, I think the arena of trying to understand commons has been also probably at its nascency. There is a long way for us to go in terms of recognizing what it means to really approach a framework of development, as I would like to see it, rather than as a methodology, as a framework which guides us. And so that's going to be something that we're going to be exploring in the next 21 days. I thought I would do two things today as I speak to you. One is to bring to you our own thinking at ActionAid, and by this smaller group in ActionAid which actually does the work around urban, the core group which works around urban, which works together with many of our colleagues across the country. This group of people who sit largely in Delhi but are all over the country work in 15 states, and we work in about 32 cities. So the footprint is not small. I mean, of course, in the Indian context, 32 cities is not a big number, but still for a development agency, it is a significant footprint, I think. It allows us a certain vantage point in terms of looking and understanding issues uh, from the uh, from the point of view of people who, what we call, makers of the city. And the makers of the city are not necessarily the dwellers of the city. So that's the first point that I would like to also bring across to you, because ActionAid has had tremendous amount of work looking at the city from the point of view of those who engage with the creation of the city, and not necessarily having access, although they were part of the creation of the city. The work on homelessness has been a classical bit of work that ActionAid has been involved in. There have been other areas that we have also moved into, including arenas of looking at workers' rights, more in the formal, but much more in the last many years in the informal, which is one of the largest sectors of employment. Of course, in the last few years, the movement of people from the formal to the informal have actually been also accelerating for multiple reasons that we will also try and explore in the next few days as we go along. So the informal sector economy has been something that we've been really engaged with in these multiple cities, looking at it from the perspective of workers from various fields, construction being one, construction labor being one significant area. Workers who have been involved with, people who have been involved with street vending, which is another very large area of work that we've been engaged with. People who have been in the arena of domestic work, and also significantly other areas like, for instance, waste picking, which has become a fairly significant part of cities and the life in cities. So there are multiple constituencies within the cityscape that we engage with, and engage with fairly significantly. Our program, because it has a large footprint, it also allows us to have a little more granular understanding of what is happening across sectors, within sectors, in different geographies, because just because it's a sector does not necessarily mean that the analytical analysis is exactly the same. The sectors in different geographies also, send out different kinds of information, analytical information to all of us. And so we try to work across the country with that bit of information. We also, ActionAid, and in the person of Sandeep, is also in the World Urban Forum. Sandeep himself is the co-chair of the World Urban Forum, and therefore that gives us also another vantage point into the larger discourse on urbanization that is taking place at a global level. So one is the global level, and also the South-South level of working. I'm sure that Sandeep, when he speaks, will bring to us a little bit more information from that arena as well. The reason why we decided to focus this particular Urban Action School around commons is also because we felt that as an approach, this has not been investigated a lot, especially in the Indian context. I think it was worth investigating. So therefore, we started a bit of background research. Urban Action Schools also try to look at, within ActionAid, Urban Action School has a specific place, and it tries to look at what we call over the horizon issues. Not necessarily engaging with issues which are immediate and just below our noses, but also looking at issues that will need to be addressed in, say, 4 to 5 years' time from now. So the Urban Action School, in that sense, tries very hard to work with issues that we think will become much more closer to advocacy in a few years from now. The way we work, the way the school runs, and is that we have the most important resource, which is all of you. Each one of you, as you will discover, bring to the table a fairly unique understanding to the group. So therefore that you are a very, very significant part of this program. You are not receiving, which is what usually happens in workshops, right? We go to workshops and then we listen to people who are on this part of the table, and then we sort of take furious notes and then we go back. But you will find in the 21 days that you are here, you will find that you have as much significant role to play as anybody who is here. The person who is here will largely help lead a thought process. The role of the person who is here is to help start a conversation, and then for each one of us to get engaged with that conversation, which is very useful for all of us, because that is the way we all also learn from the thinking that each one of you also bring to the table. So we will be actually sort of creating a bit of knowledge as we go along, creating a way of thinking about the commons as we go along, rather than we being prescriptive. We don't have too many prescriptions. And that's the beauty of this program, which is that it actually comes without too many frills in terms of prescriptions. What it does is it allows knowledge to be created as we are in the process of understanding. So that's one significant part which I'd like to bring to you. The second part is the fact that the individuals who will lead the discussions will more or less not be people who will come from one stream of thought. We have tried very hard to bring people who might be almost diametrically opposite in terms of their thinking. The idea being that we need to expose ourselves to different parts of the conversation and not to go down one particular direction which we are comfortable with ideologically, conceptually, and maybe in many other ways. You know, there are comfort zones that all of us reside in, and the idea of the Urban Action School is really to shake our comfort zones a little bit, because it is in that process of shaking our comfort zones that we begin to explore new ideas and new ways of looking at some of the areas that we are trying to engage with. So you will find that we have actually chosen people who do not necessarily conform to a particular kind of thinking, which is going to be a bit of a challenge for all of us. And because I think sometimes we choose disciplinary approaches which allow us to move in one particular direction, the Urban Action School sort of shakes that up a little bit, and that's part of the design, that it shakes it up. So don't worry, it is not by accident that happens. It happens because there is a certain curation that has taken place, because of which we actually bring people who might be contesting with each other's ideas. And I think it is because this space exists for those contestations that we feel that it is also a potent space for ActionAid itself, because we learn from these discussions and we also take forward, like I mentioned, the over-the-horizon bits emerge because we are able to actually work with those contestations rather than move down a particular path which is easier for us to work with. The school, therefore, is a space for experiment at multiple levels. Experiment at the conceptual, ideological level, experiment at the level of trying to interact with each one of us who comes from very, very diverse backgrounds. Some of us are researchers, some of us are planners, some of us are activists, and there are other kinds of people who are in this room. You will discover them as you go along. And therefore, we are forced to also engage with multiple points of view on the same topic. And so there is two levels of contestation. The contestation which takes place because the person who is the discussant brings to you a certain point of view, and then for each one of us to engage with those points of view from our multitude of experiences that we bring to the table here. So I will leave you with this bit of a curtain raiser. you will see me around quite a bit, so I don't want to expend my energies speaking to you. Just today, you will certainly hear from me on a day-to-day basis. So I welcome you all to this program, and I hope that you enjoyed as much as we enjoyed putting it together. Our team of people who were all involved with putting it together, we did enjoy putting it all into shape. I hope you will as well enjoy being part of the process of creating new ways of thinking around the urban commons. Thank you, and welcome once again to Hyderabad, to IPE, our hosts, and to the Osmania University campus, as we discussed with Dr. Irfan, which is a historical campus that you've been part of. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Katie. The next speaker is Mr. Sandeep Chachra. Just a brief introduction about him. He's a social anthropologist by training and a development activist who has worked with different indigenous and Dalit communities across India. He is currently the executive director of ActionAid India and is also an active member in the collective developing the Global Economic Literacy and Budget Accountability Platform and the South-South People Solidarity Forum. He's working on developing the South Asian processes for the World Forum of Alternatives and is also the co-chair of the World Urban Campaign. So I welcome Sandeep and request him to say a few words. Thank you.
How few is the few?
15 words.
So thank you, and esteemed panelists, Dr. Lakshmi Kumari ji, and of course my colleague Katie and Anjaneyani, we miss Dr. Mishra. It's my privilege to be here and welcoming you from all parts of the country, I understand, to this very exciting 21, 22 day long sojourn, as we call it. So warm welcome to all of you. We celebrate the fact that you have taken time out of your day-to-day work, your life per se, to come here together, to spend time exploring something which we think is very, very important for the future of the world. In fact, if I were to say, as far as the urban issues go, probably these are the years which will determine the future of what not just urbanization in India looks like, of course it will, but what also the future of India broadly would look like. So every day I understand from the Niti Aayog of India yesterday, Mr. Kant was speaking at one of our forums on SDGs, that 30 Indians come every minute to one of the cities in our country. And we are at that cusp of a rapid transition where within 5 years, within 1 year, within 20 years, the scenario completely changes. In fact, if you travel to cities within a space of a year or two, you can barely recognize the city you were from, or you have not had the opportunity to travel for a while. The rapid transformation going on. So I think for the future of our country, particularly for the urban areas, these are very, very interesting years. And it is for this reason, not just because they are interesting, but because they are substantive in determining what the welfare of the people would be, that ActionAid India, together with CIRIC, led by Suresh, Dr. K.T. Suresh, very able, and the team of CIRIC, that for the last 4 years, we have been every year systematically in the same month with very honored partnership of Institute of Public Enterprises. Ma'am, I take the opportunity to celebrate our partnership. We've been running these 3-week-long courses on various topics around urbanization, around the urban question. This one promises to be far more interesting for several reasons which I'll get into shortly. Having said that, this is a transformation which is not just there for India. India, part of South Asia, and large parts of Africa are relatively, even today, more rural. Our own levels of urbanization are far, far behind what some other continents have seen. over about 80% in the continent of South of America, Latin America, the Americas as a whole, as well as Europe, which went through this transformation in the late 19th to the early 20th century. And there is a question which such a transformation therefore invokes for South Asia and some other parts of Asia, but as well as for Africa. Can this be the same model of transformation that happened, urban transformation that happened in Europe, more particularly, and later somewhat in Latin America? Can we be building the same kind of cities? Can history repeat itself, in short? Can we be building the same kind of cities that America did? The city of Atlanta is a city of cars. So it is assumed that if you live in Atlanta, it's a city for cars. That's how houses are located. It's got more motorways, and perhaps economic estimates would tell you that when cities in the US were built or in Europe were built, some economists would say that energy was far more easier to get, power was far more easier to get, fuel prices were far more under the control of the north, and therefore the kind of urbanization they could make, you can't. But that's not the only reason. Far more important reason is that this kind of urbanization is happening in South Asia and agrarian Africa at a huge cost to the majorities of our population, who are still engaged very deeply in what you would call agriculture sector, what I, as the editor of a journal on agrarian questions, would call the agrarian question, which is slightly wider than just agriculture. It's going to be built on lives and futures of small farmers, little farmers, marginal farmers, the peasantry of India, which comprise roughly about 55–56% of our national population. Looking at numbers, which runs into about, I would imagine, about 50 crores, 52 crores population. Households would be fewer. If we have a population of 125 crores, roughly about 56 crores or so, 55 crores or so. So it's going to be at the cost of a future of those people. And along with this transformation comes the transformation in the nature, in the world of work for them. This is an important question that International Labour Organization is examining in these years under the title what they call the future of work, or what will happen to work in the 21st century, alongside what will happen to urbanization in the 21st century. A question, the latter question, which has been examined in detail by a newly formed, not so old, agency of the UN called the UN Habitat, which Mr. Suresh just referred to a while ago in terms of his referencing of ActionAid's work. An agency which therefore has decided to come up with an agenda which shall drive in its thinking, its view, as well as perhaps a global view on urbanization for the next 20 years to the next 30 years, something called the New Urban Agenda, which I request that you should surely take the opportunity to read while you are at the course over here for the next 3 weeks. So in a sense, it's a deeper question for the global south. It's not just a question of whether China or India, or for that matter South Africa or Nigeria, or for that matter Kenya, or for that matter Pakistan or Nepal or Bangladesh can afford the energy to make the urbanization, can afford the fuel to make the urbanization, can afford the infrastructure to make the urbanization. It's a question of whether it is really desirable, of whether similar kind of urbanization that happened in Europe in early 20th century, particularly what happened in Latin America in the late 20th century under forces of a different nature, should really be the model and desire of the day today. Alongside this question, as I already said, is the question of the world of work. This world today has 2.2 billion informal workers. Now, these informal workers are people who, to a large measure, have left farming or have been eased out of farming. One would say dispossessed of farming, or been forced out of farming on account of various factors for which we do not have time to get into at this moment, and therefore have joined long queues of wage labor on what is called the informality, unregulated, underpaid, without any protection of labor rights and hardly any, if at all, social protection to cover the odds when they fall into those odds. So in some ways, this is the large reserve army of informal workers that the world has today, of which in no small measure about a fourth, or it's little less than a fourth is ours, 0.5 billion, 50 crores are Indian informal sector workers who are not exclusively urban, but certainly have something to do with some stake in what the nature and future of urbanization and therefore of the rurality of India would be. For it should be clear to you that the urban question and the imagination of urban cannot be devoid of the imagination of rural, for these two worlds are very, very interconnected to each other. For sure in our country, but it's a generalized thinking. It's not just only applicable to India, it is a global applicability. So I think it's a very, very interesting time for you to examine these agendas and these issues as you spend time here for the next 3 weeks. We have wonderful speakers who would be with you as resource persons, as thinkers, people of established credentials, people who have struggled, people who are activists, people who are academics over the next 3 weeks. So do take the opportunity and time to challenge, to ask them, to dig deep into their wisdom. For this is an opportunity, if I was in your position, I would love to grab again and again and again. That's what I want to say. Now coming back to the question of the topic for this Urban Action School. Very, very interesting topic, and I'll say a few words on it. Urban commons. I mean, sometimes, now that I have been in the social sphere for long years, it's easy to understand. So one does wonder, what is this urban commons that's being spoken of? Some of you may be, some of you might be already experts at it, and we love this diversity. In our view, urban commons is a way we can get to the root of the problem itself. In our analysis, the problem is the problem of individual property rights, on which builds the very base of capitalism, on which builds the very base, because any analysis, not just leftist, exclusively leftist, would tell you that the root cause of problems, the root cause of inequality, the root cause of exclusions, the root cause of dispossession in this world, the root cause of such stark inequalities, reflected not just between the city and the rural areas, reflected within the city of what is called elite areas and non-elite areas, or what is called the greens of the city and what's called the slums of the city. The root cause of all these problems is this embrace to capital for the last 3 centuries. And therefore, at the root of it is the value of individual accumulation and competition. Long years ago, Peter Kropotkin, one of the leading Russian thinkers, had said that actually cooperation and solidarity, collaboration, have a lot more to contribute to the building of a civilization than has competition. And therefore, if you have to go ahead in the 21st century, perhaps the world should embrace the value of cooperation and solidarity much more than the value of competition, which was the reigning deity of the 19th and the 20th century. It was the reigning force, one competing against the other, an individual competing against another, a student competing against the third, a boy competing against another boy or girl, and a country competing against each other. I was sharing these thoughts yesterday at the future of South-South solidarity and South-South cooperation, and the challenge that the South-South cooperation would face in this particular century. So therefore, the idea of commons gets to the root of it. The idea of commons is an idea of building a common collective thinking, a common collective ownership, and a common collective access and right, let's say, over property. And it's a big challenge to the question of capital. And therefore, it is not going to have an easy future. And therefore, it is a struggle which perhaps will be one of the key, in our estimation, one of the key struggles of the 21st century. For it, you can always see it coming. You could always, some of you who come from states in the east of India would surely have heard of the struggle that the indigenous people in the eastern part of India, particularly in Jharkhand and Odisha, embraced the struggle of Patthal Gadi, Patthal Garna, Patthar Ko Garna. So you must have heard of that struggle where indigenous people, particularly in Jharkhand, the Mundas, the Oraons, they said that look, I will keep off our land. We have the Chotanagpur Tenancy Act. This is our common heritage. These are our common lands. You guys keep off it, because for all you have done in the last 70 years, notwithstanding the legislation, a very interesting legislation called Panchayati Raj Extension to Scheduled Areas Act, PESA, of 1996, notwithstanding that legislation which protects and gives common property rights, particularly in 5th scheduled areas where the tribes reside. Notwithstanding that, our lands have been raped, our property has been taken, our lands have been stolen, mines are dispossessing us every day. This is also a struggle in the 6th scheduled areas in the states in the northeast. So in some ways, you can see that coming. You can see people asserting their rights as common rights over, and perhaps elements of sovereignty over the nature that they reside in. It's not just the question of land, it is the question of the water, the rivers which are being privatized. It's the question of the air which is so polluted. I live in Delhi, and Dr. Irfan was telling me, Hyderabad has 1/5 the levels of pollution of Delhi. I said, well, that's an understatement perhaps. In my own family, people have, we saw these pictures in Delhi, and that tells where the crisis is, of people lighting crackers with masks. So one wonders what's really going on. And these are quite viral on Facebook and Twitter, I have noted. But having said it, this question goes, you can already see what's coming. You see this in indigenous people's struggles all across the world. I get the opportunity to travel to different continents. I see this as much in Amazon. I see this as much in rainforests around Indonesia as I see it in Jharkhand, as I see it in our own central Indian terrain. It is not very long, it's not very much in future that these struggles will transpose themselves in the urban dimension. For you can already see the rumblings there. If you have ever a chance to look at Microsoft and Google pictures of cities, aerial pictures of cities, you can see what's really the problem. About 10% of the city's population occupying about 80 to 90% of the city land, as is the case of Mumbai, and about 70 to 80% of the population of the city castigated and compelled to live in 15 to 20% of the landmass of that city. Overcrowded, without basic services and provisions, without perhaps water, with perhaps very high mortality rates, relative and comparative mortality rates, with no greens, with no parks, with no good public services, overcrowded, under what is called tenacious conditions or hazardous places. Go to the dump yards in Delhi, go to the wastelands or waste parks in Bombay, around the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, for instance. Huge areas of dumping and huge areas of waste. And you will see poor people who are workers of the city, as Suresh so nicely said, the makers of the city, the politics of thinking. Because for they who are crowded in these areas are the ones whose sweat and blood builds the cities. It's the same way as the city of Brussels was actually built on life and blood of indigenous people and native populations of Congo. For Congo was a colony of Belgium. For King Leopold himself was gifted in his marriage a country called Congo, and he took no time in completely running the country dry and expropriating all wealth to Brussels to build the beautiful city of Brussels, which is famed for its beauty and its architectural grandeur. So this is where we are. So urban commons goes to the root of challenging the value of individualism, the value of individual property, the value of competition, and therefore tries to imagine a future of urbanization which is very different from the urbanization we've seen all these years. One where people live together, one which also involves Gandhian ideology of living on the basis of need, not on the basis of greed, of living just with just enough for yourself, of not accumulating, of not creating a society which is completely a consumption-led society, which is an endless pursuit in the long run. The other interesting aspect, somewhat contrarian, and the second aspect to your course is an imagination of the right to the city. I'll tell you two quick stories about it, aware of the time and the watch which runs past as I speak for some reason. This is with reference to the one struggle that I won't tell you is the struggle of social organizations, of which certainly I have to say that ActionAid has the honor of being part of. The struggle of making right to the city reality in the global debates and conversation, and therefore making this struggle of people. What does right to the city mean? In simple ways, right to the city means a collective thinking of a right that the larger majorities of the city have towards the city. So in the governance of the city, in the spatial dimensions of the city, in the economics of the city, whether it's polity, economy, or the social dimension of the city. So that there is not only a few people who determine what the city would be, and a large majority have to suffer the consequences of or enjoy the consequences of that decision. So it's a participatory thinking of what the city should be like. So there has been a struggle. And as a result of this struggle today, the new urban agenda, and there was a lot of opposition. I personally being involved in that process thanks to ActionAid. I can only say that despite all opposition, finally the UN Habitat has installed the idea, not the right, the idea of the right to the city in the new urban agenda. So as you read the new urban agenda, you will find somewhere some phrases for right to the city. They might sound a bit jarring, as they do to the Americans, as they do to several other governments who opposed it tooth and nail, because it challenges the very way urbanization in future would take place. So I think that's one thing that I wanted to say. The second thing that I wanted to say about the right to the city, and why it probably might be a little contrarian, because rights, as it has been interpreted in the past, it's not that that was the imagination of right, but the way it's been interpreted in the world is very much an individual thinking of rights. It's very much a thinking of rights as if it stands only for the individual, and therefore not intending the rights discourse, and not intentionally, but the rights discourse has ended up celebrating individual and individualism far more over the collective thinking. Although the UN corrected the error by quickly bringing in the fourth generation of rights or the third generation of rights, which they called collective rights, as a quick afterthought, if not a long afterthought. So in some ways they did realize that the future of the world cannot only be the individual of the world, and it has to be the societies and the collectives and the communities, and they did correct it. But nevertheless, in practice, this is what's happened. So in some ways, when we say urban commons and the right to the city in the same breath, then the only common factor, perhaps therefore it would be, that we're talking of majorities or generalities of the city. So it's not one set of individuals vis-a-vis another set of individuals, because commons is about common good of the humankind. Later in the course, I am aware that one of this, her name is Dr. Birgit Daiber, and I'm not sorry if I'm spilling the beans, but she's disconnected. She's here to talk. She's from the Rosa Luxemburg party and left party, the German left, but she will be here to speak to you. But she's an academic, she's a thinker. She'll be here to speak to you about a book she's done. And do spend time with her if she's here for 1 or 2 days. Do spend time with her to understand what's happening in different continents. She's traveled and she's been working in different continents on the question of commons and on the question of rights and that connection between rights and commons, not just in urban but also in the wider sense of the word. So do take the time to talk with her and interrogate her and understand from her. But just suffice to say, there might be these contrarian tendencies you might see in the, as Mr. Suresh just outlined, you might see an eclectic kind of a discourse a discourse which comes in from different dimensions, happening right in front of you. For we, it is a part of the design. For we wanted to expose you to the various future conversations. Both these conversations, as I have said, are fairly futuristic, and there is therefore the difficulty in putting together this course. There is not enough body of ready-made, cooked up wisdom and books and knowledge which is handed over from generation to generation. So it's almost as if new thinking, new knowledge and new constellations are being imagined by those who wish to see a just new brave world. When you say a brave world, almost sounds in a patriarchal context. I don't mean that. But what I mean to say is that there is an imagination of a just equal world which is unfolding, certainly in not so much of a minority. It is unfolding among the largest struggles, among the largest people's mobilizations, momentums that are happening in different parts of the world, probably at the moment not talking to each other, probably at the moment somewhat fragmented, and probably that's the need of this century to bring together into a meaningful conversation. And this is the reason we within CIVIC, of which I have the privilege of working with for the last several years, and within ActionAid, of which I have the privilege of working with for the last 2 decades, I think it thought that it would be useful to bring it together to you. Of course, the course will get into more concrete dimensions, which are some things you may have heard. Things like urban transport, things like, I don't know if those part of the course curriculum, things like migration, things like employment. Now, these are very usual topic of debates, but not these two. So I think this is where we want to leave, because in our sense, and I'll stop here, in our thinking, we want to take this opportunity to give you the time to reflect, to think, to advance knowledge, as well as to perhaps be the warriors of justice for the century which is unfolding, for the kind of world that we wish to see. So this is our not so hidden agenda in making this course happen. A very warm welcome to all of you once again. I hope you have a very, very fruitful next 21 days. I'm very sure for the kind of efforts my colleagues Katie, Pritha, Matyasha here, Vishi, other colleagues, Anjanelu, and of course with full support and full sort of inputs also from the Institute of Public Enterprise. I'm very confident it will be very, very interesting work. If I do personally get the time over the next 3 weeks, I certainly love to be here more to listen to the debates and conversations you will be having at that stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandeep, for that thought-provoking lecture, and also deconstructing what we all think and mean on urban commons. I welcome Anjanelu Madhuluri as the next speaker, who is the head of the Hyderabad Regional Office of ActionAid and also a passionate social activist working on different issues and for the rights of the dispossessed and underprivileged in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Welcome, Anjanelu, and please share a few words with us.
Good evening, friends. We extend our hearty welcome to all of you who has joined here for this course across the country. And I was part of the selection process. We have seen the applications and we were confused to select, because this is one of the wonderful batches, and we took lots of time to decide whom to select, because all the applications are very good. So you are all are very lucky to be here with your the experience, the expertise, and the interest you have shown to participate in this training program. And I would like to say a few words about the current environment in Hyderabad. And this year the rains are very less, deficit rainfall is there, and actually the winter has not yet started here. Actually it has to start from October 1st until we are on November 10th, but still we are not feeling any cold, and this one we can enjoy this environment. And when compared with the other cities' pollution, Hyderabad is far, far less. But in addition to that, this Osmania University is very cool and calm. You don't find any pollution at all. So you can enjoy the environment here in Osmania University and everything. And this 100 years, Osmania University has celebrated recently the 100 years centenary celebrations. And historical movements has emerged from this university. From Vande Mataram movement to freedom struggle and everything. You can say quit India, everything. And this university has given P.V. Narasimha Rao as the Prime Minister of India. He was from this university. And the current Chief Minister of Telangana is also from this university. And one more unique identity for this university is, this university has awarded D.Litt to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in 1953. And for his achievements, for his leadership, for his writing the Indian Constitution, and no university has given in India, and this rare opportunity for Osmania University, I can say, and that has been still very interesting to know from Osmania University. He loved Hyderabad, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So, keeping view the aggressions taking place in India, he has proposed Hyderabad to be the second capital for India. So, that is also historical, and there is a historical background for his conclusion, Hyderabad to be second Indian capital. And regarding this recent Telangana movement in Hyderabad, in Telangana region, Osmania University has shown the path to the movement. Hyderabad, this Osmania University students, they started the movement for separate Telangana to get their fair share in resources, in employment, in water sharing, everything. So that has led to the massive movement in Telangana, and Professor Kodandaram, who was professor from this university, he was the chairman of Telangana Joint Action Committee, and finally all political parties came under one umbrella, and the central government, Manmohan Singh government at that time, was forced to announce the formation of separate Telangana state. Now it is progressing, and so I wish all of you to have a pleasant stay, good learning process, and you can share your experiences to other colleagues and introduce yourself to each one, and become friends, and hope that you will gain lots of knowledge and enrich your work in your respective cities and all. I wish all the best. And if you have any issues, any challenges, including medical emergencies, we are at your service. Feel free to talk to us, and we are here to take care of you. Hyderabad is a wonderful city you can enjoy, as Dr. Irfan was telling. And if anybody has not yet travelled by metro, you can travel by Hyderabad metro also. It is unique construction made by L&T, and it was for 33 years lease to L&T. The government share is very, very nominal in that, and the entire funding has been done by L&T. It is very successfully running in Hyderabad in two sectors, LB Nagar to Miyapur and Nagol to Amirpet. So that also you can experience. All the best.
Thank you, Anjanelu. The last speaker for the panel, Dr. Lakshmi, who is the Assistant Professor at the Institute of Public Enterprises. She has been associated with the institution in various activities such as teaching, training, research, and her areas of interest include economics, privatization strategies, venture capital, etc. Over to you, Dr. Lakshmi. Thank you.
Thank you, Prita. Good evening, all of you. On behalf of Institute of Public Enterprise, which is a hosting organization along with Urban Action School, I welcome you all to Hyderabad for this 21-day workshop. And our association with Urban Action School, this is the 4th year. I hope we will be continuing in the future also. And this is, I'm just thinking when Prita asked me to speak as a first speaker, but I said I just wanted to recollect the 4 years journey of in the association that we had with ActionAid and the Urban Action School. So I just wanted to take a last, be as a last speaker to just share with you all the journey what we had and how this course has received a very good response. Under Urban Action School, ActionAid has been doing in various parts of the country, and we got the opportunity in Hyderabad to be part with you. And as Anjaneelu sir told, out of a lot of scrutiny and it became difficult for us to that point. I wanted to share with you, and Anjaneelu sir also admitted that. So I wanted to continue with his words. And this time we have selected an very young and energetic group. Of course, every year we have been selecting, but those who are doing a hardcore research in the area of urbanization. And here I would like to put before you 3 important points. When Prita gave me this book, A Knowledge Space for Urban Policy Practitioners. So my strong belief is that in this, as a part of 21-day workshop, I expect all of you, because you are doing research, to bring out problem-solving approach. Problem-solving approach we keep discussing, but how far these discussions are reaching to the policymakers is a point which is very important. And I, on behalf of the entire group, I am requesting ActionAid Sandeep sir, in our website also, all this along with not only videos, if we come up with any policy issue after the 21 days, if we discuss, these things can also be uploaded in the website, because it's anyone may click and look at our things and okay, this is the policy issues that they have formulated. Even if the government is willing to accept our things or not, but these are the policies that we have designed, we have selected as a problem-solving approaches to the urban common space or ecology. We are discussing 21 days various issues, and if all these end group, if they form into different groups, we have been identified, and if they come up with various problem-solving approaches with any of the matrix that you wanted to use, or any tool of research, econometrics you wanted to use, any technique you can use and come up with a very good solid problem-solving approach and policies which are useful for the our sustainable development goals approach, or they can use anywhere. So if those things can be uploaded in the website also, I hope that will be very useful, and I expect all the participants to work on this also towards the end of your 21-day course. And another important thing I would like to share with you, and there are just 3-4 minutes on urbanization and commons. Why we have to discuss on this topic? Why this has gained a momentum? Why, since from the past 4-5 years, we are doing on this, centering around urbanization and also on the commons and also the city space, especially urbanization space. You please start thinking, is it there before 20 to 30 years back, this topic? Are we serious about this topic? 30 years back? 40 years back? No. But today it is a buzzword. Why? What made us? Because we are only common, we are only responsible for making this. So we should think from the grassroots level, especially urbanization at one end it is important, and another part, strengthening the rural areas is also very important in order to avoid this problem. We need to strengthen the rural sector, rural areas. As Sandeep sir was mentioning, agricultural base. 50% of the Indian economy, the population are depending on agriculture. Still, if we strengthen, bring modernization, mechanization, innovation, in agricultural sector, I hope this problem of common space, this issue may not arise today. Migration is another big thing that we have to address, whether it is urban migration or rural migration or international migration. It is also another thing that may slowly come up. So where lies the problem actually? So we have to strike a balance. I hope some people are doing PhDs. I have gone through their CVs on this. So my request to you is address to the grassroots problems and try to strike a balance there. Means do hardcore research in the area of the problem which is leading to this. Fighting for the space. And another important issue I would like to put before you to think on is a current problem. That is in the cities, especially the common space like parks, lakes. Here protecting lakes is a very big issue, and land acquisition, land grabbing, and these things need to be addressed at length. And we need to put before, of course, policymakers also knows all these things. But still, if we all of together, means if we have more forums, more workshops, and if people do more research on these issues, I hope definitely there will be a transformation in taking care of the issues like this. And another important thing I would like to put before you, means it's all thoughts I am giving you. I hope many of you have travelled, and sir, you also have travelled. I have travelled widely to various countries. If you go there and see, once we heard the word castle. Castle means castle, house with lot of rooms, space, with big wide roads, parking, walking space, parking space, lot of place. Can we imagine such type of housing structures here? We have seen them a lot in various parts of the world, but why not in India? That is missing today. What made us to miss such type of housing structures? Of course, we are coming with gated communities, and but on what these communities are developing, what happened to lakes, what happened to public spaces, what happened to public parks. So because the major cause is the density of the population, and the important issue that what made the density of population to increase? Because of migration. So please start taking like this. I am just giving you your thoughts. So various parameters or the causative agents what made this problem to be more, and highlight one important issue and go deep, do a strong research into that focused area and come up with a very good solution where your work, even if it is 4 pages or 5 pages, if you upload on your web, any policy maker should come back and read the paper. So such type of effective things should be the deliverables after this 21-day workshop. I hope that I'll stop with this. If I get any opportunity Prita gives, I would like to talk with you for 1 or 2 sessions so that we can have a very good interaction. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Lakshmi. You're most welcome any of these days to come and share your deliberations. I mean, I'm no one to give you a permission for that. I thank all panelists here for sharing their valuable insights with all of us. So now, the real resource for the 21-day course, which is the participants. I request all of you to give brief introductions about yourself, your name, from where you have come, few lines on what you work on, and your expectations from the 21-day Urban Action School. So we'll have that with the permission of the panelists, and then we'll have the dinner together. So we can start from here. I'll start from myself. I am Prita Chatterjee. I work with ActionAid and Citizens Rights Collective for the past 8 years, and I'm also the course coordinator for Urban Action School.
I'm Meghna and I'm coming from Bangalore. I'm a PhD student registered with this, looking at livelihoods in the peri-urban areas. And
Expectations from the school.
so I think I would like to know more about what are the different discourses of on the urban, because that is what I think I will get from here.
नमस्ते, मेरा नाम महेश गजेरा है। मैं अहमदाबाद से हूँ, गुजरात से। मैं आजीविका ब्यूरो करके एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है जो लेबर एंड माइग्रेशन पर काम कर रहे हैं। उसके साथ में पिछले 12 साल से अधिक जुड़ा हूँ। और मेरी जो अपेक्षा है, जो रूरल टू अर्बन माइग्रेशन हो रहा है और जो शहरों में माइग्रेंट लोगों की स्थिति है और जो अर्बन कॉमन्स है, वो माइग्रेंट्स के लिए कैसे भी वो मददगार हो दे सकता है। लाइक स्पेस है, सैनिटेशन है, चाहे वाटर है, उसी पर मैं सीखना चाहता हूँ। धन्यवाद।
Hi everyone, my name is Angol Kipken. I'm from Nehru Shillong, completing my PhD in Northeastern University. I'm working on cookie tribe migrants from Northeast in Delhi. So in this program, I share my experiences about the kind of discriminations, marginalization that the cookie tribes or the Northeast people in general are facing in Delhi. And also I hope to listen from you as well to understand your perspective about the Northeast people themselves. Thank you.
Good evening everyone. My name is Rohit Jha. I'm a PhD student at BITS Pilani, the Hyderabad campus. My research area, broad area, is urban sociology, and I'm trying to understand social segregation in Indian cities on the basis of the infrastructure of the basic communities gap. So I've just started working on it. So how the basic communities actually reinforce the social barriers in Indian cities is the question which I'm trying to understand and look upon in terms of urbanization. And prior to my PhD work, I was working with the government of Andhra Pradesh on developing infrastructure projects for the small towns like Kakinada, Rajahmundry, to give them under Amrut and Smart City mission. Thank you.
Good evening everyone. My name is Vijaya Chandan from Manipur. मैं एक सोशल वर्कर हूँ और मैं बहुत ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के साथ काम कर रही हूँ अभी, जैसे कि एंटरप्रेन्योर्स एंड मैनी मोर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के साथ काम कर रही हूँ। और अभी मैं माइग्रेशन के बारे में ज़्यादा सीखना चाहूँगी। Hello everyone, I am Priyanka Shah from Jawaharlal Nehru University. Actually, my topic is on urban heritage, and I am looking on the spatial and socio-cultural negotiation within colonial buildings of North Kolkata. As the cities are expanding in the peripheral areas, the core area is gradually declining. So how these age-old build forms, which have a hybrid architecture, how they are negotiating with their space, and how they still impart the city's identity. What are the future existential possibilities in this neoliberal world? I am looking on that, and from here I will be trying to get an idea of marginalized section. There is a contestation with the right to the city, but even the middle income groups, how they are negotiating with this space, because their social status have changed over the time. But so how this they are negotiating with the city spaces and how the built architecture is imparting the city's identity. I want to look into that. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Suraj. I am a doctoral scholar in JNU, New Delhi. My area of work is broadly with the unskilled informal sector laborers in Delhi, their unstable life and work, and
spatial transformation. So that is like in a simple word, I look into how spatial processes are leading to what kind of social transformation. So I have worked for my MPhil on the peri-urban area of Gurgaon, that is Manesar, where after coming up the Maruti plan or the industrial model township, what kind of social transformation have taken place. So I work little from a Amit Rai political economy, which looks into the question of marginalization and the social exclusion from below. So from this workshop, again, it will be really, we both, anyway sitting in Delhi and in JU, we are already so much aware with most of the research work, but I thought this is a very good place where I could meet the practitioners and those who are really out of the academic work, who are dealing with the urban issues day to day. So I think it would be a very learning opportunity. Thank you.
Hello everyone. A very good evening to all of you. My name is Asif. I am from Bihar. I have completed my MSW this year. During academy, I joined ActionAid. There I worked on 2 or 3 projects with ActionAid. One of them was informal sector laborers, and one of them was the condition of women health in urban slum of Patna. तो मैं वहाँ की कुछ जो एक्सपीरियंस है वो आपके साथ शेयर करना चाहूँगा कि जो हम लोग ने जो काम किया इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर लेबर्स थे, वहाँ पे जो मेजॉरिटी ऑफ जो लेबर्स होते हैं वो रूरल एरिया से आकर पटना में वहाँ रहते हैं और उनकी जो वर्किंग कंडीशंस है और जो वहाँ रहने का उनका कंडीशन है वो बहुत खराब है। वो बहुत छोटे छोटे जगहों पे रहना पड़ता है, वहाँ उनको बेसिक फैसिलिटीज कुछ नहीं मिलती, ना ही कोई किसी तरह की सोशल सिक्योरिटी स्कीम्स उनको मिलती है। यहाँ जो 21 दिन का जो प्रोग्राम चल रहा है वहाँ पर ये एक्सपेक्टेशन है मेरे के जो अलग अलग डाइवर्स स्टेट से आए जो लोग हैं वहाँ अर्बन कॉमन्स के क्या प्रॉब्लम है वो मुझे जानने का मौका मिलेगा। थैंक यू।
My name is Avi, and I'm a project associate with the Focus Cities project of an organization called VICO in Delhi. We work with informal women, informal workers, majorly 3 sectors particularly, street vendors, waste pickers and home-based workers. And we are starting to approach issues of livelihood and right to the city. So I'm here mostly to learn about the major discourses around urban commons and to understand where informality ties into it.
Good evening everyone, my name is Sohini Bhattacharjee. I'm a PhD scholar in JNU as well. My work is actually, it's still in its preliminary stage. I plan to work on gated communities and what the community in this gated community as a space means, and how the idea of exclusion and segregatory residential settlements create this community, supposed community, by inclusion, through exclusion, through the built environment. So I basically want to engage with theories and the multidisciplinary aspects of what the idea of commons is, and also how the right to the city is it's a negotiated term, and so I hope to learn a lot from this.
Hi, I'm Jaya. A lot of people are there from academics. That gives me a chill. The thing is, I took a break from work. So I have initially been working upon homeless and the institute, homeless and the destitute and the child rights. And I just quit the job and took the break. And since February, I'm on break. So during this break, I am exploring the work culture of different social organizations, which needs, according to me, social development sector needs to do a research upon the work culture, because it's a must, because in the grassroots levels actually. So my expectations from this were like, actually I was berozgar, so I joined this program honestly. But then I expected that while I'm like while I'm like exploring this social development sector and the work culture, so everything is like correlated with each other. So while I was like working with the homeless people and the destitute, so I found out that people have like they have like migration has been the result of the tribal displacement and everything. So these are all the things that I'm looking forward to like gain more importance. And Rise to City, I want to explore more about this program so that I can correlate with the ideas and I can put forward that into my work. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a research student at Central University of Gujarat. My research study is on refugees and the city. I'm looking at urban refugees. And I want to understand the relationship of non-citizens or aliens and the city. So what is the relationship of those who have no citizenship and the city? So I have taken, my study is in Delhi and in Hyderabad, and I'm looking at specifically the Rohingyas. So I would be interested in understanding through this course what is the relationship of non-citizens and the city. I have started exploring slums because they live in slum-like settlements. So why do they want to live in slums? Why do they want to work in the construction, labor sector in the cities? And why are they found in Indian cities? So this is my aim from this project. And I also hope to engage and learn with all of you interesting people.
Hello everyone. I am Vipin Kumar. I am a PhD fellow from IGNOU New Delhi. My study area is I am working on tribal livelihood in the urban spaces of Jharkhand. I want to, through my topic, I want to look at how for a community which is an ethnic space has transformed into an urban space. So from this program, I want to go more into how, when we say an urban space, what a social group justify itself.
Hello everyone. My name is Deepak Mandal and I am a PhD scholar. I am pursuing my PhD from Institute for Social and Economic in Bangalore. And my title of the research is Urban Environmental Movements in Addressing Environmental Challenges, a study of Bengaluru, where my study is focusing on two major burning issues. First is urban waste-related movements and second one is urban lake-related movements. And I choose Bangalore as my study area because nowadays that several environmental problems and lake-related problems like Bhattur and Bilandur, they are getting major focus in the daily newspaper. And I applied for this course because this urban commons and right to the city is closely related to my area, and I want to get that different types of ideas of different type of urban commons and the right to the city concept by the David Harper. And
Pratyasha. We have some other colleagues in our team and some guests.
Hi, I'm Pratyasha. I work with Pritha at Delhi with the ActionAid's Urban Knowledge Hub, that is the Citizen Rights Collective.
Friends, my name is Manikala. I work in ActionAid as a different.
Good evening, my name is Vijay, working with the Action Hyderabad office.
Hi, this is Deepak. I work in Communication Resource Center Hyderabad. We do this all in the video thing and give it to the participant who is the opportunity to come here.
Yeah, two Deepak.
Hi, my name is Govind and I'm working as a cinematographer.
Hi everybody, I'm Vishy. I represent an organization called Communication Resource Center. We do a lot of alternate media work. We've been associated with Urban Action School in the last 3 years.
Hello, I am Bahadur. I am just a visitor came here to meet some friends.
Hello, my name is Anuradha. I represent an organization called Rainbow Foundation India. We work with the kids on streets and we also work with the homeless women and other rights and attachments.
Hello everybody, I'm Irfan. I'm working in Hyderabad Regional Office, Action Aid.
So, thank you everybody. So with this, we end the inaugural program. We all meet each other in the dinner hall at 7:45 for dinner. And tomorrow we start the day at 9:30 in the same room. And breakfast timings, etc. we've already shared on the group, WhatsApp group that's formed. I just want to quickly ask that everybody is there on the WhatsApp group that has been created, because we share the timings, etc. Okay.